SABC News presentation.
Good evening to you. Welcome to Interface here on SABC2. My name is Tembisa Machele. So you may have heard that there are boycotts being carried out against Woolworths for importing products from Israel. You may also be following what's happening in the Middle East. Well, tonight on Interface we ask, what impact can sanctions against Israel and companies trading with Israel have on the peace process in the Middle East? And our guest, Mthunzi Mbuli, who is with Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions South Africa, and he's a campaigner there, as well as Zev Krengel, the president of the South African Jewish Board of Deputies. Now, before we talk to them about this matter, let's have a quick look at this insert compiled by Kinosi Queen.
The Woolworths and BDS saga has South Africans on opposite ends of the Middle East conflict at loggerheads. Those rallying for the Palestinian cause believe the retailer has broken the all-important rule of ethical business by continuing to source products from Israel. Those who've entered the fray argue that Israel has a well-documented record of oppressing the Palestinian people. Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions movement is an international campaign aimed at putting pressure on companies to stop trading with Israel. The organization accuses Israel of illegally occupying Palestinian territories. Fast food chain McDonald's, SodaStream, Pick n Pay and other companies trading in Israel have recently been affected by the campaign. The Jewish Board of Deputies, on the other hand, believes that calls for boycotts against Israel are counterproductive and will hamper the goal of achieving peace between the warring parties. They also say protests contradict basic principles of South African freedom of speech and association. One reason the Israeli-Palestinian conflict remains so volatile in South Africa is the country's own history. Those who support the BDS campaign have likened what's happening in Gaza to the apartheid system, which saw black people being relegated to second-class citizens in South Africa. The retailer recently applied for an interdict at the High Court in Johannesburg to prevent pro-Palestinian activists from protesting inside its stores. Meanwhile, the BDS hijacked proceedings at Woolworths AGM this week. The group used its shares in the company to promote its objectives. The activists had purchased Woolworths shares for the purpose of attending the meeting. Kinosi Queen, Interface.
So let's get straight into our discussion tonight. Mthunzi Mbuli is a campaigner for BDS SA. Mthunzi, what exactly is it that you as an organization are trying to achieve?
Look, as BDS, ours that we're trying to achieve is simple. We want to see a free Palestine as mandated by the people of Palestine. So having companies like Woolworths that are continuing to source in the apartheid Israel is playing a very crucial role in terms of sustaining the apartheid Israel. So ours is to put pressure on business like Woolworths to de-invest, or rather to be boycotted by normal South Africans who think like normal citizens who have seen and have been inspired by the anti-apartheid movement.
Why are you targeting Woolworths? Surely they're not the only retailer that's importing from Israel.
They claim to be ethical first.
Sorry?
They claim to be ethical first.
To be ethical?
Yes. They claim to be this world biggest, they claim to have ethical relations, and they claim to be this big wealth respecting company, and that is known of sourcing best products, known of customer caring, known of many things that consist of caring, which is not the truth according to our findings, because they just have a small trade relations with the apartheid Israel, which most of the things that they are buying from the apartheid Israel can be easily sourced in South Africa.
Let's look at those things that you're talking about from what Woolworths has released in a statement, and we did invite them to be part of this discussion, but they did decline, so we're going to have to speak on their behalf. They say figs, pretzels, and pomegranates. Those are the only three products that they source from Israel, and it is not from occupied territories. So why are you fussing over those?
Look, those are things that can be sourced in South Africa. Why is it that small? In fact, exactly that small, those small figures. Why should they source those small figures from an apartheid state? Why every South Africa is here producing almost the very same things that they are getting from Israel?
Zev, you are the president of the South African Jewish Board of Deputies. I'm sure you've seen protests like these over the years. What do you make of the BDS protest?
Look, we're disappointed as South Africans. The South African Jewish Board of Deputies, we're very committed to a two-state solution. We're committed to a Palestinian state. We've gone on record many times. We just believe what the BDS is doing in South Africa is making no impact. It's actually isn't helping the Palestinian cause, and it's just causing a lot of animosity among South Africans. And I think as South Africans we have to focus first on keeping our democracy correct, on listening to law, on doing the correct things, and then being a supportive role in the peace process in the Middle East, wherever we can, to get the Israelis and the Palestinians to engage again. And we just feel this boycott and divestment is the exact opposite of what it needs. We don't want to disengage, we want to engage. And that's our commitment as South African jury, as the South African Jewish Board of Deputies. We followed in the lead of President Zuma. We followed in the lead of the Palestinians. President Mahmoud Abbas was out here recently, and we engaged with him for this specific reason. So we want to see the Palestinian state created, and we want to see it living side by side with a secure Jewish state in Israel.
But do you empathize at all with those that say, particularly from BDS, that say there have been a lot of calls for the two-state solution in the Middle East, but nothing has really happened so far? Israel is still perpetuating a lot of this violence, and so we need to be a little bit more stronger in our protests as the world.
So look, I mean, if that's what you believe, that's fine. And I mean, you know, there is a school of thought that way. I mean, first of all, the boycotts called on for is actually stuff which is being done in the West Bank, not the whole of Israel, and Woolworths isn't doing that at all. But what we all see is it's the best case scenario, it's a misguided a policy where they try to target Israel as a whole. And that to us as a Jewish community have an issue, because we do believe Israel has its right to exist in secure borders. If you want to put pressure on both sides, then you have to do it with the international community, and there are many ways to do it. But we still stand by saying, I mean, the negotiations have been close a lot of times. You can't stop it every time, because now you need the momentum. I mean, President Mahmoud Abbas and Minister Livni were very close, but they called it for a 9-month. You know, when it came to Iran, now we've extended it, the world's extended it to July. We want an extension because we want a deal. And that was such a pity that the negotiations weren't extended on all sides.
Okay, we continue with this discussion. We're going to have to take a short break, and we're going to get a response from BDS SA. And of course, we do welcome your thoughts. If you have any on this matter, do drop us a line on Facebook and also on Twitter. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Interface, and tonight we're talking about what's happening in the Middle East, and particularly the protests by BDS SA against retailer Woolworths for importing products from Israel. And of course, we welcome your thoughts on this matter as well. So Mthunzi Mbuli is with BDS SA, and just your response to what the South African Jewish Board of Deputies is saying. I know that Wendy Khan, who is with the board, issued a statement saying BDS campaigns do nothing to help Palestinians. They have zero impact on Israel. You've been called bullies, you are divisive, you are intimidatory. What is your response to all of that?
Look, I think all of that what you've mentioned is totally not true. We have made a lot of impact. I mean, the divestment of the Bill Gates and Melinda Foundation from G4S, it was a result of what BDS had done. I think that being called bullies and all of those things is something that is also not true. We have never bullied anyone. We have always continuously in our campaign towards making sure that a company de-invest or we encourage our people to boycott. We've always done it in a way that inspires people. And what I would
But
like...
what we saw on that tape were your members actually going into the Woolies stores and intimidating customers. Why did you do that?
I think if we can look at the clip very well, where the intimidation started, it was when the speaker, because there was a speaker that they were dancing to. There were people who are customers, obviously, who were trying to take the speaker away, and which obviously there will be confrontation at that point. But there was no confrontation to tell to a certain extent to an innocent customer who was just standing there. There was a confrontation between customers who were trying to take what doesn't belong to them, like what Israel is doing to Palestine. Obviously there will be confrontation in that situation. And secondly, on the issue of Zev has spoken about in terms of also as BDS, we take our mandate as BDS South Africa from the BNC, which is in Palestine.
What is the
and
BNC?
It's BDS national, is a BDS sort of a BDS national office,
Okay.
which is led in Palestine, which is where we derive from, which is led by Palestinians, which in its discovery, the BNC, it was in 2005, many civil societies, from students movement to worker movement to even civil society, they were there when the BNC was established as all Palestinians. They said to the world, the only way to learn solidarity with us is by boycotting the apartheid Israel. It was done in South Africa. It should work in Israel as well.
What is your response to that, Zev? Because there is some logic to that if you want to put pressure on a country, boycott some of the goods that people are buying so that you put pressure on this country and you weaken that economy.
No, I mean, it is a certain way of trying to get through. I mean, as I said, coming back to this Israeli issue, it's far from there. I mean, the polls are showing that the majority of Israelis want a peace deal and the majority of Palestinians want a peace deal. It's up to brave leadership. And as South Africans, we have to be a supportive role on both sides. Where the BNC is slightly different to what's happening in South Africa, first of all, I mean, the Palestinian authorities are buying close to $5 billion worth of goods from Israel, on a yearly basis. So the boycotts were meant to be originally through the West Bank and Gaza products. Second of all, to go for a local publicly owned company and force them to do that, they're labeling it correctly, they're doing everything correctly with the government regulations. If you choose to then want to do that and affect Israel, then don't buy the pomegranates, don't buy the pretzels. But don't stop other South Africans who want to go in. It's labelled, they know, we've heard the message, but leave all South Africans to go in and shop where they want in a law-abiding situation and in a shop that you don't feel intimidated.
Yeah. Zev, it's not just, I'll give you a moment just now, it's not just BDSSA that has a problem with the way that Israel has been responding to the conflict. You had the African National Congress coming out saying Israel is an apartheid state, you need to put pressure on that state. So the sentiment that is in those camps is that the way that things are right now, even with the changes in leadership, they're not actually advancing the cause of the Palestinians.
So now I don't fully agree. I see the frustration. You've got, unfortunately, on the Palestinian side, you've got Fatah PLO, which is in the West Bank, which really, it's close. Our interaction with President Mahmoud Abbas over an hour, the deal is a lot closer than people see. Your bigger issue you've got is sitting in Gaza, where Hamas, which doesn't believe in Israel's right to exist, is sitting in there. So, unfortunately, there isn't a fully unified voice coming from the Palestinian side. But what we need to do as all South Africans and as people of the world is, if you believe there's excessive force, and all of us want to see the killing stopped on both sides. None of us want to see the violence. Well, we'd like to believe none of us want to see the violence. So from our point of view, we have to get both sides back to the negotiation table. We know as South Africans, no war can end all wars. The only way you're going to end a conflict is around the table. And they've been around the table. So yes, there is a frustration. I mean, there's a frustration from our side as well. But for us, the frustration is engaging. And as South Africans, teaching our story of no matter what happens, I mean, getting closer to 94, and this is what we had the discussion. I mean, when Chris Hani is murdered in cold blood, that's a point. You know, if President Mandela wanted to, he could have exploded it. He calmed it down. He kept the negotiations going, and that's what we're requesting from all South Africans to do, to see the Palestinian state created.
I think that what Zef is raising is quite understandable, because we cannot, as South Africans, at any given point, want to interfere in terms who is pro what, like he's saying that Hamas is this and PLO and Fatah are that. What all Palestinians said to us is that to lend your solidarity with us is by boycotting and apartheid until the end occupation and attacks and the end separation of benefits in terms of Palestinians using their own route and Jewish Israeli using their own route, and also making sure that the wall itself that separates Palestine and Israel it collapses. That is the only thing that from where we're standing as BDS want to achieve.
All right, we're going to have to take another short break. Give us your thoughts. Interface on SABC2, that's how you find us on Facebook. At Interface on SABC is on Twitter, or at Tembisa Magele. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, we are now trying to wrap up this discussion on what's happening in the Middle East, and particularly the actions of BDS-SA. And I mean, in 24 minutes, we can't very well try and sort out an age-old conflict in the Middle East. But we do want to get some headway on how we are supposed to relate to each other and how we're supposed to, as South Africans, view the conflict in the Middle East. So you mentioned, Zev, earlier that President Mahmoud Abbas from Palestine was in the country and met with you. And I understand he met with BDS-SA as well. Now, in terms of the message that came out of that press conference with President Jacob Zuma and Mahmoud Abbas, what did you make of what they had to say? Because the position was very strong coming from both of them.
The position is very strong. I must say, as I said, we fully support President Zuma and our government to re-engage with both sides, which they're doing, and that was one of the reasons. President Mahmoud Abbas made it very clear to us as well that he wants us to engage, and he wants South Africa to engage with both sides to create the two-state solution.
But they were both very critical on Israel.
They were critical of Israel. They were, and I mean, as I said, we no one wants to see the loss of life, and there's always two narratives to it. And throughout the Gaza campaign, we came out and we still stand by that. It was no one wants to see any innocent people being killed, and I think that's everyone's. I would like to believe the end game, we're all on the same page, that we want to see that created. How we get there is we just don't feel, as South Africans, lending our hands to boycott divestments and making it unpleasant for fellow South Africans to do their retail shopping at shopping centres is going to help anything there. And if anything, we just make ourselves irrelevant as South Africans in creating a solution there.
Are you disappointed at all in the position of the South African government on this matter?
You know, I think our disappointment with the South African government, they haven't engaged enough with the Israelis. I often say it, and I said it, you have to understand the Israeli security concerns. Israel's very fearful. You know, it gets created after the world let down the Jewish people in Europe. The Holocaust, it comes on the back of that. It gets created through the United Nations with the Palestinian state. Straight away, the Arab countries refuses to recognize its existence. The Palestinians don't accept their state. Israel fights over 5 wars just for pure survival. So the Israelis are extremely fearful, and it's the Google map story. If you Google in, Israel looks like the very powerful force against a very lightly armed Gaza. If you zoom out, you see a little Jewish state amongst 135 million Arab Muslim states that still don't accept its right of existence. You can't phone from Dubai, you can't phone someone in Israel. There isn't a code. So, it's a people that you need to understand them and you need to understand what they
And
what
you feel
their
the
fear
South
is.
African government is not doing
So,
enough
so
of
we
that?
don't feel the South African government currently has engaged enough with understanding Israel's concerns and Israel's security concerns and why Israel is feeling quite that the South Africans are very pro-Palestinian with very little understanding what their issues are. And I think if the South African government just listen and open more up to hearing what the Israelis, I think we have a role to play.
And from your side, you met with President Mahmoud Abbas as well, and he said to Zev and the South African Jewish Board of Deputies, let's continue to engage. What did he say to you?
Look, he made it very clear that the goods from the occupied land settlements, they must be boycotted.
You're going to have to speak up. We are battling to hear you.
Oh, he made it very clear that the goods from the settlements and the occupied land, they must be boycotted by the South African government. That was
So he supports your actions?
That was his encouragement. And also, look, PDS has always had a good relationship with the government. I mean, the ruling party, several times it has come out calling for the boycott of the apartheid Israel. Not because of what Zev is raising, but because Israel is an apartheid state. And that should be understood as such.
So Zev says that the South African government is not really taking enough time to engage with Israel and understand Israel's security concerns.
Yeah, because it's an apartheid state, and it's a state that must be treated. Because, look, an apartheid state is a state that is not normal in its day-to-day relation with its people. So that state cannot then be treated at the table normally, you understand? So up until such a time that Israel realizes that Arab Palestinians, both Christian and Muslims, are normal human beings and they should be treated as normal human beings. That's how they are going to be treated by any government state in any country.
Your response, sir?
Two things. I mean, my fellow South African made a point that was just brushed over, but I think it needs to be highlighted. He said, President Mahmoud Abbas said, and he calls for the boycotting of products in the settlements and the occupied territories. That's what he just said. Woolworths isn't buying from settlements or occupied territories as according. So what they're doing here is not what the president of the Palestinian Authority want them to do. Those products are bought in proper Israel. I mean, it was said now on TV, and so on that point, I think it's very important that if you do want to do the boycott and divestment sections, which we don't believe, because we believe there is a better way to get to a lasting peaceful solution. But if you do want to do it, it's been misguided, and it's not what the Palestinian Authority is asking to do. So there has been someone's hijacked BDS South Africa, where it's now been used to target the whole of Israel and not the West Bank, which in a final deal with land swaps will be given to a Palestinian state. Second of all, just the second question, if I can say, Israel's not an apartheid state. Israeli Arabs have the best rights in the whole of the Middle East, full voting rights, full rights as Israeli Arabs, Christian Arabs, Jews in Israel proper. It's not an apartheid state. The issue comes with the West Bank and Gaza, which in a sense is unfortunately sitting in a certain level of limbo until a Palestinian state is created. So it's a very different situation.
Look, a lot of our leaders have went, Desmond Tutu, Blakely Nzimande, Thulas Nxesi, a lot have went to Israel and they've came back saying that Israel is worse than what apartheid. And we're inspired by our elders, we're inspired by our leaders. So what they say to us, it is a true reflection and we believe it. And we're not going to be changed because of one person saying that is not. And what I would like to highlight, firstly, on the issue of we're misguided in terms of boycotting. Woolworths claims to be ethical, and its abnormal relation with an abnormal state like Israel, which is an apartheid state, which I've just highlighted why we're saying it's an apartheid state.
We're running out of time. Are you going to be going after other retailers?
Look, I think that we're targeting Woolworths. I think other retailers would learn.
So it's fine for other retailers to import goods from Israel?
No, it's not fine. What is our first thing? What is our first thing that we do is engagement for the company to de-invest. If retailers agree to de-invest, there will be no need for us to go to them and
they have. You've spoken to them.
We're on Woolworths. That one must be clear.
All right. it.
We target one
We
company.
have to wrap. I'm having all sorts of people telling me that it's time to wrap this up. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. Thank you very much for coming through to talk to us on this matter. Obviously, we were not going to try and sort it out in 30 minutes, but at least I hope that it gave you a little bit of insight into what is happening, and not only in our country, but also what's happening in the Middle East. Just stay with us. Good night.